Welcome to Life Stories. What if everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie? Imagine being the daughter in a family where the truth has been hidden from you for years. What if the people you loved most, your parents, had been keeping a secret so big it changed everything? Tonight, Sophie is about to discover something that will flip her world upside down, something that will force her to confront not just her family, but who she really is. The big news her family invited her to? It wasn't for her. It was a celebration of everything she wasn't. What happens when the truth shatters everything you thought was real? Stay with us to find out. This is a story of secrets, betrayal, and the fight to finally be seen. And Sophie's journey? It's just beginning. Sophie never felt truly at home in her own family, but she kept showing up. Late shifts at the hospital, long hours on the floor, and endless responsibilities. Yet she always made it to family dinners. After all, wasn't that what families did? They stayed together, even when the cracks started to show, even when she felt invisible. But tonight, something was different. She glanced at her phone as she sat in her car, the hospital parking lot looming behind her. Her family had texted her just hours ago. Dinner at the Olive Tree, 7 p.m. Big news. Big news. The message echoed in her mind as she turned off the engine, her heart picking up speed. She didn't know why, but it felt like an invitation. Maybe it wasn't about her job or the unspoken tension that had been hanging between her and her parents for years. Maybe, just maybe, it was her time. For once, Sophie might be more than the dutiful daughter who didn't fit in, the daughter who had always felt more like a guest in her own home. She adjusted her nurse's uniform, quickly swiping on some lipstick, and stepped out of the car. The air was cool as she walked towards the restaurant, her heart pounding in a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. She had spent her entire life trying to prove herself. Perhaps this time, her family would finally recognize her efforts. She could feel it. Things were about to change. When Sophie stepped into the private dining room of the Olive Tree, a sense of warmth enveloped her. Laughter floated through the air, the clinking of wine glasses ringing in the background. But then, as she turned the corner and saw them, all of them, her heart dropped. Her mom, Jessica, was at the center, radiant as always, raising a glass and beaming with pride. Her dad, Thomas, stood by her side, a polite smile on his face as he nodded in approval. And then there was Lily, her younger sister, glowing with the attention of everyone in the room. Lily was everything Sophie wasn't, perfect in every way. The laughter died the moment Sophie entered, and she froze. Her eyes locked onto the large, glittering banner at the back of the room. "Congratulations to our real daughter." It was as if time stopped, the words on the banner blurring as Sophie stood there, struggling to breathe. For a split second, she wondered if it was a joke, but the lack of surprise on their faces told her otherwise. No one had saved her a seat. No one had even acknowledged her arrival, not with warmth or apology. Jessica raised her glass casually, as if this was all perfectly normal. "Oh, good, you made it. We've already started." Sophie forced a smile, her stomach twisting as she quietly slid into the empty chair at the edge of the table. The conversation picked up again, as if Sophie wasn't there at all. Tessa, with her flawless makeup and hair, looked Sophie up and down with a smirk. "Guess you didn't have time to change," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Sophie swallowed hard, biting back the sting. But it was Jessica's voice that struck her the hardest. "Our real daughter," she said with a proud, dramatic smile. "We finally have something to celebrate." Sophie blinked, the room spinning as she processed the words. "Wait, what does that mean about me?" she asked quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. The room fell silent for a fraction of a second before Lily laughed. Okay, let me explain," she said, leaning in like she was telling a funny story. "I did one of those DNA kits. Turns out I'm not adopted. I'm actually your biological daughter. You guys thought you had me through surrogacy, but I'm completely theirs, all along." The laughter that followed felt like a slap in the face. Her mother and father clinked glasses with joy. The sting of betrayal cut deeper with every passing second. Sophie tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She stared at the tablecloth, struggling to swallow the lump in her throat. Tessa continued to talk, oblivious to the pain radiating off Sophie, showing everyone her DNA results with pride. Apparently, I'm 100% biological. No mix-up, no donor, just me, the real deal. She grinned as if she just won the lottery. Sophie could feel her chest tightening, suffocating under the weight of this new reality. Was she ever truly part of this family? But before she could gather herself to leave, a waiter approached her, offering a small sealed envelope. "The owner asked me to give this to you," he said, his eyes darting nervously between Sophie and the rest of the table. Sophie glanced at the envelope, the handwritten name Sophie on the front. It was all she could do not to collapse in that moment. She took it in her trembling hands, feeling its weight, as if it contained the answers to questions she hadn't known she was asking. As the conversation continued without her, Sophie slipped the envelope into her coat pocket, her mind reeling. What could it possibly contain? Was it some kind of cruel joke? A cruel reminder that, in the eyes of her family, she had never really belonged? But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to stay in that room, pretending to be part of something that never truly existed for her. She stood up, quietly excusing herself. No one stopped her. No one even noticed as she walked out into the cold night. Outside, Sophie stood by her car, her hands shaking as she pulled the envelope from her pocket. The air was sharp, but it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. It was the weight of everything she had just learned. The laughter from inside filtered through the window, mocking her in its warmth. Sophie took a deep breath and opened the envelope, her heart racing as she unfolded the letter inside. What she found within those folds would turn her life upside down. What do you think Sophie is about to discover in that envelope? Will it answer the questions she's been struggling with her entire life? Sophie stood there in the night, staring down at the letter with trembling hands. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing: her entire world was about to change. What if the truth she was about to uncover wasn't what she expected? Sophie stood there in the cold night air, the letter trembling in her hands. The street light above flickered, as if it too was holding its breath. The envelope was warm now from how long she had been holding it, pressing it against her chest like a secret she was too afraid to open. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. The laughter from inside the restaurant still echoed faintly, but it felt miles away, like it belonged to someone else. With a trembling hand, she finally tore open the envelope. The paper inside was thick, almost old-fashioned, and the handwriting was sharp, deliberate. Someone had taken their time to write it. Sophie felt her pulse quicken as she read the words, her heart skipping in her chest with each line. The familiar script of her grandfather's handwriting brought a mix of comfort and dread. She hadn't seen it in years. "Sophie, if you're reading this, it means they finally told you. Or maybe they told you just enough to hurt you, but not enough to explain. I've waited years for this moment. There's something I've needed to say for a long time, but I was asked not to. I kept that promise until now." The words hit Sophie like a punch to the gut. She blinked rapidly, fighting the rush of tears that blurred her vision. What was this? What did it mean? Her grandfather had always been a quiet presence in her life, a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. She remembered the whispers he used to give her when she was younger, comforting her when her parents didn't, telling her she was stronger than they knew. He'd always made her feel like she had someone, even when it seemed like the rest of her family had forgotten she existed. But this letter, this wasn't just comforting words. This was the truth, a truth she had never even suspected. "You were never supposed to end up with them. Your mother, your real mother, was my daughter's best friend. Her name was Camilla Harris. She was strong, fierce, kind. She wanted you more than anything. But she died in a car accident when you were just a baby. No one talks about her anymore. They buried her memory to protect themselves. Not you." Sophie's vision blurred as her throat constricted. Her knees gave way, and she sat down on the stone bench near the sidewalk, her heart pounding in her chest. Camila Harris? Her mother's best friend? Sophie had never heard that name before, not once in all her years of living in this house, in this family. Never once had she been told the truth. She had been raised in silence, surrounded by whispers and secrets that had never been meant for her ears. After the accident, Marlene stepped in. She offered to take you in. She said it was the only way to keep you safe and cared for. At the time, I believed her. She was my daughter. I wanted to trust her. But the truth is, she didn't take you out of love. She took you out of guilt and pride. She didn't want to raise her best friend's child. She wanted to erase her. I tried, Sophie. I tried to keep you close, but Marlene didn't want me involved. She said I confused things. She said it was better for you if you just moved on. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. The words were like daggers, each one finding a new wound. Her mind raced, her heart battered with the shock of it all. Her mother's best friend, Camila, Sophie's real mother. It made sense in a way that she had never felt fully a part of this family. Now she understood why. They never wanted her. The realization crushed her, slowly, suffocatingly. She had always believed she was just the quiet, responsible one, the one who had to earn her place. But now it was clear. She wasn't even supposed to be here. She had been an afterthought, a mistake to be swept under the rug. But what hurt more than anything was the fact that they had never cared enough to tell her. Not once. I remember how Marlene used to pull me aside at family gatherings, whispering things like, "You're stronger than they know," or "You see things clearly, just like your mother." I thought she meant Marlene. Now I know she hadn't. I kept Camila's things, letters, journals, photos. I have one of her holding you in the hospital, smiling so wide you'd think she was the luckiest woman alive. She was. You were her miracle. You still are. Sophie's hands shook violently as she held the letter. Camila's miracle? For the first time in her life, she could feel a sense of belonging, real belonging, not the hollow sense she had been living with for so many years. Camila had loved her. Camila had wanted her. Sophie had never known love like that. But now in the cold night, she could almost feel her mother's presence, feel the love she had left behind, a love that had been buried for years. Come see me tonight. I'm still here. I'll tell you everything. Love, Grandpa Walter. Sophie could hardly breathe. She wanted to run to him, to find the answers she so desperately needed. But there was something else gnawing at her. What about the family inside? Her adoptive family. The people who had raised her, or at least she thought they had. The people who had betrayed her, who had erased her mother's memory as if it never existed. She felt an overwhelming tide of anger rise in her chest. But it was more than anger. It was the beginning of a resolve she had never known before. She stood up, shaking, and slipped the letter into her pocket. Her car was only a few steps away, but the weight of the letter in her pocket felt like 100-pound stone pressing against her heart. As she climbed into the driver's seat, she took a deep breath, her knuckles gripping the steering wheel so tight that her hands ached. The night was silent, save for the low hum of her car's engine. But inside, everything had changed. The question now wasn't what she would do next. It was who she was going to become. What will Sophie do with the truth she's just learned? Will she confront the family that betrayed her, or walk away and start fresh with her real family? Sophie drove, her heart in her throat. She knew she couldn't go back, not to the life she had been living. The person she had been was gone. She was about to step into a new world, one where she could finally choose herself. But the question was, how far was she willing to go to make that choice? Sophie's hands shook as she parked her car in the familiar driveway. Grandpa Walter's house loomed before her, its warm light spilling from the windows, beckoning her in. But Sophie didn't feel the comforting pull she once did. Now it was a house filled with secrets, a house that had hidden the truth from her for far too long. Her heart ached in her chest, but it wasn't the kind of ache she had always known. It was the ache of discovering a truth she had never wanted. a truth that had shattered the image of the family she once thought she knew. She opened the door, and there he was, Grandpa Walter, sitting on the same porch swing she had once run to as a child. The same swing where he used to tell her stories of the world, where he made her feel safe when her parents' love had always been just out of reach. He stood slowly, his frail body moving with careful, deliberate grace. His eyes were glassy with unshed tears, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I'm so sorry you had to find out like this," he said, his arms opening to her. Sophie didn't hesitate. She walked into his embrace like a daughter who had waited her whole life for the comfort he now offered. The weight of the world seemed to lift off her shoulders as he held her, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she was holding herself together for the sake of others. She could finally let go. "I don't know what to feel," she whispered, her voice muffled by his chest. "I don't know what's real anymore." Grandpa Walter's arms tightened around her, and he gently pulled back to look her in the eye. "What's real, Sophie, is that you are loved. Your mother, Camila, she loved you more than anything. And I know you've always felt like you didn't belong, but you've always had a place with me." Sophie nodded, her breath shaky. "I don't know if I can ever go back. I can't look at them the same way." Walter's expression softened. "You don't have to go back, but you do need to face what they've done to you. You need to decide if you want to be their daughter, or if you want to be who you've always been meant to be." His words rang in her ears as she stepped inside, the old wood creaking under her feet. The house felt like a time capsule. Everything was the same, just as she remembered it. The crocheted blankets, the vintage lamp with the leaning shade, the smell of cedarwood in the air. But now it was no longer home. It had never truly been home, not when the truth had been so carefully concealed. Walter led her into the living room, where a small wooden box sat on the coffee table. Sophie's heart skipped a beat as he opened it slowly, as if it contained something sacred. Inside were letters, stacked carefully, some addressed to her, others never sent. The neat handwriting that filled the pages seemed to jump out at her, each word a piece of a puzzle she had never known existed. "These are for you," Walter said softly. "Your mother wrote them during her pregnancy with you. She kept journals, letters. She talked to you every day, Sophie. She was proud of you, even before you were born." Sophie picked up a letter, her hands trembling. She opened it, reading the words her mother had written long ago, and with each line, her heart cracked open further. "I can feel your heartbeat before you kick, my sweet baby. I can't wait to hold you in my arms. You are my everything, Sophie. You are my miracle." Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the letter to her chest. This was the love she had never known, the love she had always longed for but never received. She had spent so many years trying to earn the approval of people who had never truly seen her. Now she understood. Camila had always seen her. Walter gently placed another letter in her hands, this one marked with a name she had never expected to see, her mother's name, Camila Harris. Sophie opened it slowly, her hands shaking as she read the words that her mother had written for her, for a daughter she would never have the chance to raise. "My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay long enough to raise you. I'm so sorry for that, but I need you to know something that no one else can ever take away. You were wanted. You were chosen. You were loved. If they tried to make you feel small, it's because they were afraid of how big your heart could be. Don't let them dim your light. You are mine, and I am yours always. Love, Mom." Sophie let the letter fall into her lap, her chest heaving as the weight of her mother's words settled in. She was not a mistake. She was not the leftover daughter. She had been loved, chosen, wanted, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. But the truth, as comforting as it was also a burden. The anger she had kept buried for so long surged to the surface. How could her parents have kept this from her? How could they have let her grow up believing she was unwanted when her real mother had wanted her more than anything? "I can't go back," Sophie whispered to herself, staring at the letter in her hands. She stood up, a fire in her eyes. I can't let them pretend like nothing happened, like I don't matter. Walter watched her, his eyes filled with understanding. You don't have to go back, Sophie, but you do have to walk away. You have to choose yourself, even if it means leaving them behind. Sophie took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. I'm not going back to that table, to their lies. I'm not going back to a family that never truly loved me. She left Grandpa Walter's house that night with a sense of peace she had never known before. The drive back to her apartment felt different, lighter, as though the weight of her past had been lifted. She had found the love she needed, but it was not in the family she had grown up with. It was in the truth, in the love of a mother she would never meet, and a grandfather who had never given up on her. As Sophie stood in front of her mirror later that night, her reflection was no longer a stranger. She was Sophie Harris, the daughter of Camilla Harris, the woman who had wanted her, loved her, and fought for her. And Sophie was ready to fight for herself, to live the life she had always deserved. How do you think Sophie's journey will unfold now that she's chosen to walk away from her past? What does it mean to finally choose yourself? If this story touched you, leave a 100 in the comments to let us know. Where are you watching from? Share this story with your friends, and thank you for watching Life Stories.